In the deep mountains of Russia, a massive pit of rotting flesh appeared. Countless birds circled above the pit. The putrid stench extended for kilometers. A highly potent virus broke out. Infected individuals experience fever and coughing. Their bodies are covered in blisters and decay. Where did the rotting flesh in the pit come from? Can humans resist the unknown virus? This is the latest Russian drama 0 Hour. Senior virologist Anya, due to some personal issues, she was transferred from Moscow to work at the Virology Center in Novosibirsk. Her first assignment after the transfer was to investigate an outbreak of food poisoning at a large meat processing plant. Several shift drivers at the factory all experienced vomiting, diarrhea, and persistent high fever. These are symptoms of food poisoning. However, the factory doesn't provide meals. The drivers had eaten different things. How is it possible for simultaneous cases of food poisoning? Anya suspected it was an issue with the working environment. She went to inspect the trucks used by the drivers. Upon opening the doors, a foul smell hit her nose. The cargo compartments were filled with unprocessed waste meat. Anya suspected there was an issue with the meat. She had samples taken and sent to the laboratory for examination. Shortly after, she went to interview a few drivers and learned from them the meat processing plant had been illegally dumping waste. They weren't disposing of the waste meat as required by industry standards. Instead, they were dumping it directly in the nearby forest. Anya obtained the address from the drivers. She decided to investigate the truth herself. Before leaving, she searched for the address online. She discovered a video blogger who had received reports from residents of Cedar Village. The factory was dumping waste meat in a large pit in the forest. The blogger had personally gone to the site to confirm the situation and had filmed the massive pit filled with waste meat. The enormous pit was filled with waste meat. The stench of the waste meat could suffocate a person, but the video didn't attract much attention. Shortly after, Anya got in touch with Gene from the laboratory. Gene used to work at a hospital. He frequently visited the village to provide free medical care. Therefore, he was familiar with Cedar Village. Anya planned to accompany him on a trip to the village. The car stalled shortly after entering the mountain road. Gene took some time to fix it. Shortly after the two arrived at the village entrance, they encountered the village chief and his wife. Anya recognized him as the person who went up the mountain with the video blogger. She asked the village chief to take her to the pit. Gene had other tasks to attend to, so he didn't go up the mountain with them. Anya and the village chief walked halfway. Suddenly, a gunshot rang out in the village. They quickly rushed over to investigate. It turned out that Gene had gotten into an argument with a local villager. He had come to examine Tara, the sick daughter of a farming family. A man recognized Gene. He had performed an abortion for the man's daughter in the past. This led to a physical altercation between them. Gene couldn't explain clearly. The baby had congenital defects. Even if born, the baby wouldn't survive. He didn't want to argue with the man. He locked the room door to prevent the farmer's wife from getting close to the bedroom, because Tara was likely infected with a contagious disease. Upon hearing Gene's words, Anya immediately went into the room to assess the situation. She recognized this Tara. She was the video blogger. It seemed that the large pit was indeed problematic. At this moment, Tara was lying on the bed, coughing uncontrollably. Her face was covered in cold sweat. Her thighs were covered in pustules. Tara's mother also developed coughing symptoms. Anya took her out of the room. Then she instructed Gene to contact the virus center as soon as possible. The signal tower in the village had been broken for a few days. Cell phones couldn't receive signals. Anya planned to return to the center first. The car broke down halfway. Anya went to the village to find a place to clean her body and burn the protective suit. Shortly after, she walked into the village tavern. She wanted to buy some high-proof alcohol for disinfection. The villagers deliberately gave Anya a hard time. They challenged her to drink a whole glass of strong liquor. Anya picked it up and finished it. The villagers had no choice but to keep their promise. They gave her a large bottle of strong liquor for free. After obtaining the alcohol, Anya left the tavern. As soon as she walked out, she began rinsing her mouth and vomiting. It was just an act she put on. Anya returned to Tara's house. She first made a makeshift protective suit using a raincoat and duct tape. Then she disinfected herself with alcohol. Since there was the first confirmed case of infection, the virus would spread rapidly. So she gathered all the villagers. She hoped that everyone would self-isolate and wait for the staff to come and conduct tests. During this time, please do not wander around. However, the local residents didn't trust modern treatment methods. They were also unaware of the danger. They were hostile towards virologists. The village chief stepped forward to enforce the measures. Only then did the villagers return home. The village chief took Anya to a nearby abandoned medical station to see if they could find anything useful. The medical station had been abandoned for too long. Even if there were medications, they would have expired. On the other hand, with the help of two villagers, Jean finally repaired the car. Jean couldn't wait for Anya. He quickly drove away from the village. Anya could only watch as Jean left. At that moment, she noticed that the door of Tara's house was open again. Anya hurriedly went in to check. She saw the hostess having a meal with her neighbor. Tara had left the house. Infected individuals should not wander around. Anya hurriedly went out to find her. Tara didn't go to crowded areas. Instead, she set her day on the outskirts of the village. Lost in thought, Anya immediately took her back home. On the other hand, shortly after Jean left the village, the cell phone signal was restored. He immediately contacted the virus center to report the situation here. A car came towards him. The glaring headlights made Jean instinctively look up. He turned the steering wheel to the side to avoid it. However, the car still flipped over. On Anya's side, she was afraid Tara would continue to run around. She stayed by the other person's bed. Then she used her phone to record the day's events. At that moment, car lights lit up outside. Then the sound of a car horn followed. There was actually an engagement party at the village entrance. The groom's family had come back from a neighboring village. Anya quickly stepped forward to stop them. She wanted them to leave Cedar Village, but these people simply didn't listen. Shortly after, Jean also got out of the groom's car. It turned out that the people collided with him on the road was the groom's family. Fortunately, Jean was okay. Anya couldn't stop the villagers from gathering together. She sat her day in the distance, feeling frustrated. Jean went over to comfort her. I have already reported the situation here to the virus center over the phone. They will definitely send people to help tomorrow. The accident happened quickly. A villager suddenly collapsed and remained motionless. Everyone panicked. At the same time, similar cases were also discovered in the city. The infected individual was still a young child. The situation was developing in an uncontrollable direction. After the virus center received Jean's voice message, they immediately dispatched two staff members to Cedar Village to assess the situation. Meanwhile, Anya's colleague Mark specifically went to the supermarket to buy meat from the meat processing plant, handed it over to the inspectors. The meat he bought at the supermarket was not from the same batch as the one sent for testing by the meat processing plant. The boss actually falsified the consumption meat. Fortunately, both samples were virus-free. Mark took the report to find the meat factory boss and warned him, if you show the analysis results to the press, your meat factory will definitely be shut down. Nevertheless, I can't conceal the issue with the incorrect batch, but you must explain who the contractor is for handling the waste meat to ensure the normal operation of the meat factory. The boss informed Mark about the third-party contractor. He even made a special statement. 2 weeks ago, the meat processing plant had already terminated the contract with this contractor. On Anya's side, she asked the villagers to take the fainting person back home. Then she burned and disinfected all of his clothes. At the same time, Tara's condition continued to worsen. She probably developed symptoms about 2 days ago. Tara thought it was just a common flu at the time, so she didn't pay much attention to it. Now, in just a few days, the village has already had a second case of infection. To prevent further spread of the virus, Anya wanted the village chief to clean up the abandoned medical station and move the patients there for isolation. The village chief was about to take his wife and children and escape to the mountains to hide from the virus. Anya was very angry. Cedar Village only had 18 households. Everyone knew each other and had close relationships. Now was the time when they needed each other. As the village chief, how could you flee at such a critical moment? The virus has an incubation period. If the village chief's family already had an infected person, what would happen if something went wrong in the mountains? But the village chief still took his family and left. In the end, it was Jean who led the villagers to clean up the abandoned medical station. Anya immediately moved the infected individuals in and took temperatures of each villager. If the temperature was normal, a circle mark would be drawn on their doors. Anyone with a fever had to be moved out because there aren't many people in the village. The inspection was quickly completed. A total of 4 villagers had a fever, but the problem is that these individuals haven't been to the pit on the mountain. What exactly infected them? Anya instructed the villagers to ensure that both water and food must be thoroughly cooked before consumption. Shortly after, the staff from the virus center arrived. Jean was very happy to see them. Finally, there were people to help with the work. Tara died before receiving treatment. The two staff members have already informed their superiors and plan to return to the center immediately. After the news of Tara's death spread, the villagers were afraid of being infected and began to make a fuss about leaving here. The tavern owner even rode away on a bicycle before he could leave the village. Military personnel arrived at the scene. At the same time, the village chief and his family arrived at the hunter's cabin to seek lodging. As soon as they arrived at the entrance, they saw a circle of ashes surrounded by stones. Inside, there seemed to be the carcass of some animal. The village chief found it somewhat strange, so he asked his family to wait nearby. He entered the cabin alone to investigate. He discovered that the hunter had long been dead. The village chief and his family had no choice but to camp in the mountains. His wife moved aside. She rolled up her sleeves. The woman's arms were covered in blisters. Clearly, she had been infected by the virus, but the village chief's wife didn't confess. The village chief decided to seek refuge with friends in a neighboring village. He hadn't gone far when he encountered two strangers seeking help. They claimed to be hikers who had recently been attacked by a wild animal in the forest. One of the young men had a bitten arm. The village chief didn't doubt their story. He not only helped them treat the wound, but also agreed to guide them through the woods. In Cedar Village, the staff members are disinfecting the entire village. They have surrounded the village with wire mesh and have removed Tara's body. They have incinerated all the belongings used by the girl. Several armed soldiers are guarding the village entrance and prohibiting villagers from leaving without permission. Next, the cleanup crew arrives at the back mountain. They begin to deal with the abandoned meat pit on the mountain. They first collected samples and sent them to the laboratory. Then they incinerated the rotten meat. Countless birds circled outside the large pit. They were constantly pecking at the rotten flesh here. They wanted to drive away the humans burning the pit. Meanwhile, Anya found a dog leash in the pile of rotting meat, but nobody in the village owned a dog. On the other side, Mark arrived at the contractor's factory for meat disposal, but the people in the factory were gone. Mark wanted to collect some samples to take away. While in a cardboard box on the ground, he found many used tissues, along with a store receipt. Mark immediately went to that store to inquire about the whereabouts of the contractor. The store owner appeared to have a cold, constantly wiping his nose with tissues. Mark was just about to take his temperature when he received a message from Anya. It turned out that a few hours ago, Anya found the girl's phone under Tara's bed. She wanted to unlock and check it but didn't know the password, so she asked Mark for help to search Tara's social media accounts and find out when the girl's birthday is. But Tara didn't use her birthday as the password. Anya went to consult Tara's mother. Unexpectedly, they actually used Tara's mother's birthday and unlocked the locked phone. Anya found in Tara's photo album a picture of her with a pet dog. Just then, the recently engaged couple stole 2 sets of protective suits from the staff in an attempt to blend in with the disinfection team and leave the village. Luckily, Anya recognized them. She quickly chased after them and had someone stop the young couple. At the same time, Mark, based on the address provided by the store owner, arrived at a nearby apartment building. As soon as they went upstairs, they ran into Yerk, who was wearing sportswear. Upon seeing the protective personnel, Yerk ran away. Mark caught up with him. Nevertheless, Yerk was just a driver for the meat processing plant and was showing symptoms of infection. The soldiers in Cedar Village quickly found the whereabouts of the pet dog. It was hiding in a lakeside cabin. Its owner had been dead for a while. The condition of the body was similar to Tara's. The staff members immediately inspected the area around the cabin. They ended up retrieving a large number of animal carcasses from the lake. Downstream from this lake, there are villages. The water flows meanderingly for several kilometers. Anya immediately applied to the higher authorities to expand the quarantine zone. At the same time, Tara's autopsy report came out. Her internal organs were almost completely decayed, which is a testament to the severity of the virus. More importantly, doctors also found traces of suspected dog bites on Tara's right leg. Her toenails on the right foot were also black. Could it be that the virus was transmitted to Tara by a pet dog? Shortly thereafter, the military issued a 1-month ban on reservoirs, prohibiting villagers from approaching the riverside or consuming water from the reservoir. But they did not disclose the outbreak. Instead, they falsely claimed that the water source was contaminated. At this time, the infected individuals in Cedar Village were still not receiving medical treatment. They were practically trapped in the village waiting to die. Anya was extremely infuriated by this. On this day, a mother and son drove to the outskirts of the village. They were relatives of the tavern owner. They wanted to visit their family members, but were stopped outside the village. Anya noticed this mother and son communicated through sign language. Because the young boy was deaf and mute, she had an idea. Anya approached the tavern owner and asked him to use sign language to communicate with her sister to expose the situation of the outbreak to the public. Only in this way could they raise awareness. The tavern owner used sign language to relay Anya's message to her sister. Her sister then recorded the content on her phone, preparing to send it to Anya's journalist friend. The three of them coordinated very well. Meanwhile, the female partner of the young couple suddenly developed a low-grade fever. They quickly took the girl to isolation. Anya became busy with this. On the village chief's side, his wife was currently running a high fever. Yet, the village chief did not return to Cedar Village because of this. Instead, he continued to carry his wife forward. On their way, they encountered a hungry wolf. The village chief raised his hunting gun, but he realized there were no bullets. He took out a dagger and got into a defensive position. The wolf pounced on the village chief, but the village chief stabbed it to death with the knife. On the other side, in the cabinet of an abandoned medical station, Jean found an old document. Anya immediately went over to examine the information. She discovered that several decades ago, Cedar Village had experienced a similar outbreak. Even the symptoms of the infection were very similar. The medical conditions at that time were very primitive. The authorities simply abandoned the infected individuals at the medical station, leaving them to fend for themselves. Anya looked through the medical records from that time. Surprisingly, she found the tavern owner's name on the list of infected individuals and the name of an old lady of Tara's neighbor. Some details flashed through Anya's mind. Both the tavern owner and the old lady had circular scars on the back of their hands. Initially, Anya thought these were chickenpox marks. Now it seems highly likely that these are scars left behind after their infection. The condition of the infected individuals in the village continues to worsen. The medical staff can only administer antibiotics to them. Because everyone is ignorant about vaccines, there are no effective measures. However, the document from last night gave Anya great confidence. Since someone survived the previous outbreak years ago, they must have antibodies in their bodies. So Anya decided to collect the tavern owner's blood first and inquire about the details of the outbreak back then. At that time, the tavern owner was still a child. He couldn't recall the situation at that time. The old lady also forgot. They couldn't provide valuable clues due to the limited equipment at the temporary medical station. Anya decided to send the blood sample for central testing. The test results for the river water are out. There is no virus in either sample. This is undoubtedly good news. Just when everyone thought the outbreak hadn't spread, a herder living on the grassland unexpectedly got infected with the virus. Although she recently went to Novosibirsk, she didn't come into contact with anyone from Cedar Village. Anya is still unaware of this news because Cedar Village has encountered another problem. Do you still remember that engaged couple? Because Kate, the female partner, is in isolation, several infected individuals have died these past few days. Enzo is worried about his fiancée. He keeps insisting on seeing Kate and wants to bring her back home. The staff is stopping Enzo. The other party climbed to a high place, threatening to die, insisting on releasing Kate. Anya told Enzo to calm down. Bringing her out will only endanger more people. Enzo understands that such behavior is reckless, but he's afraid that, before the two of them could finish their wedding, he would lose his beloved Kate. Mark came up with a solution. They can't have an online video wedding to facilitate the wedding for the young couple. Mark prepared a tablet and contacted an officiant. In the end, Enzo and Kate became husband and wife with the witness of their families. On the other side, the village chief's family and two men are temporarily taking refuge in a cabin deep in the mountains. The cabin owner, Leo, is a childhood friend of the village chief. They had an unpleasant incident when they were young. They haven't been in contact for many years. The village chief doesn't want much contact with Leo. He plans to leave after the rain stops. His wife's condition is getting worse. The village chief wants to go out and find some clean water. He was knocked down by two men. As soon as he reached the door, it turns out they are Leo's men. Many years ago, the village chief and Leo were both members of a criminal gang. They risked their lives during a mission. They successfully stole a considerable amount of money. At a critical moment, the village chief unexpectedly fled with the money. The injured Leo was arrested and imprisoned by the police. Leo has been remembering this incident for decades. The village chief says he didn't touch that money. If Leo spares his wife and daughter, the village chief is willing to hand over all the money. Leo was about to ask where the money is hidden. He was suddenly attacked by the man behind him. these two men actually wanted to deceive each other. Now both Leo and the village chief are tied up. The village chief gave Leo a signal with his eyes, asking him to help pull out the weapon hidden in his boot. After Leo got the small knife, he cut the rope. When the man came over to ask about the money's location, he suddenly felt dizzy. It turns out he had already been infected by the village chief's wife. Leo took the opportunity to strike and stabbed him with a knife. The two of them worked together to defeat the enemy. Yet Leo was unfortunately shot during the fight. He died shortly after. The village chief was also hit by bullets in the shoulder and leg. He realized his daughter was missing. The village chief thought of going outside the cabin to find her, but it passed out due to excessive blood loss. On the other side, the blood test results of the tavern owner came out. There were indeed antibody cells present. They wanted to extract the antibodies to make serum, but no matter how many attempts they made, they all ended in failure. Meanwhile, there were villagers in Seer village who disobeyed the ban and got into conflicts with the staff. A villager pulled down Jean's mask and spat on him to prevent Jean from getting infected. Anya had him taken to isolation and then conducted a comprehensive examination. Unexpectedly, they discovered something surprising. The data shows Jean was infected with the virus 4 days ago. All patients have specific immunoglobulins, but Jean has a high titer of protective antibodies. According to logic, he should be in the 3rd stage, but Jean's data indicates his body is still in the 1st stage. The virus is spreading very slowly. Before Anya could make progress in her research, Kay, who had just recently gotten married, died. Enzo watched as his beloved's body was taken away. Anya felt very upset upon seeing this. She composed herself and went to talk to Jean. She wanted to find out the reason for his low infection rate. Through their conversation, it became known when Jean first entered the village, he ate licorice from the old lady of Tara's neighbor. Apart from this, Jean's diet was synchronized with Anya's. After hearing this, Anya immediately went to find the old lady. The house was empty. Anya saw that the basement door was open. She took a risk and crawled inside to find her. The old lady was indeed standing inside. Anya wanted to ask her where she got the licorice, but the old lady had Alzheimer's disease. Her mind was sometimes clear and sometimes confused. After asking for a while, Anya couldn't get any useful information. At that moment, she suddenly felt nauseous. Anya quickly took off her mask and vomited. Seeing this, the old lady wanted to go upstairs to get water, but halfway there, she had another episode. She forgot what she was supposed to do. She saw the basement door open, so she conveniently closed the door, completely forgetting that there was a person inside. Anya suddenly felt darkness in front of her. First, she climbed up and took temperature on her own. She found that she had a temperature of 39 degrees. Anya quickly pounded on the wooden door for help, but there was a thick blanket covering the door. The old lady was a little hard of hearing. She couldn't hear any sounds. Anya used the weak light emitted by the electronic thermometer. She searched around the basement cabinet. Luckily, she successfully found a flashlight. Anya rummaged around and pulled out a pry bar. She wanted to pry open the basement door, but due to the high fever, she was weak all over. She accidentally fell off the ladder. Anya accidentally broke her leg. Her body temperature quickly rose to 40 degrees. She experienced hallucinations and confusion. Various illusions flashed before her eyes. Anya gradually lost her sense of time. It became difficult for her to distinguish between illusion and reality. She saw her boyfriend, family members, and even Mark. When Anya regained consciousness, she found the basement ventilation opening. Anya desperately cleared away the mud inside. She shouted for help loudly, but she didn't receive any response. She found iodine from the cabinet. She wrote down the information about licorice on her arm. Even if her body was discovered later, she wanted to pass on the crucial clue. Then, Anya used the limited tools in the storage room. She created a makeshift smoke device and aimed it at one side of the ventilation opening. As for whether this signal could be noticed by someone, it was up to fate. Fortunately, Anya was fated not to die. The staff noticed heavy smoke at the grandma's house. They quickly rushed in to put out the fire, and they found Anya. Everyone immediately lifted her out of the basement. Although Anya has not regained consciousness yet, but Mark noticed the information on her arm. After Anya regained consciousness, her first reaction was to check her arm. Fortunately, there were no abscesses on it. The skin still looked healthy. She still had to undergo isolation. Anya's journalist friend finally exposed the situation of the epidemic. Under the pressure of public opinion, the authorities sent the first batch of infected individuals in Cedar Village to the infectious diseases hospital in the third state of Novosibirsk, but the virus had already spread to Kotelovka, and there was a continuing trend of spreading. The center had to develop a vaccine as soon as possible. Meanwhile, Anya's boyfriend William also arrived in Cedar Village. He owned a pharmaceutical company that had previously developed a certain cough medicine containing special licorice. This medicine had been discontinued for many years, but after William learned about the situation, he was willing to restart the production line. The pharmaceutical company needed a laboratory to provide accurate data to prove that licorice was indeed helpful for the epidemic. Mark first contacted people from the virus center to inform them about the situation here. Everyone decided to use a combination of local herbs and antibiotics to inhibit the spread of the virus in patients. On the village chief's side, his wife died in the cabin. The village chief's infected wound prevented him from leaving the forest. His daughter refused to leave her critically ill father. She wanted to dig a grave to bury her mother. Despair enveloped the hearts of the father and daughter. Just then, the sound of a helicopter suddenly came from above. They must be the rescue team heading to Cedar Village. The girl shouted for help as she chased after the helicopter, but the village chief knew that wouldn't attract attention. He simply dragged his injured leg and climbed to his wife's corpse. The village chief used the nearby charcoal fire to ignite the cabin. Thick smoke billowed out of the forest, only in this way, to make people pay attention to his daughter. On the other side, while researchers continued to analyze the blood sample of the tavern owner, they unexpectedly discovered a type of plague bacteria that could actually kill the virus. They used this knowledge to produce a serum, and with the experimental product, they went to Cedar Village to meet Mark. Meanwhile, Mark was taking care of Anya. Her condition was very critical. The virus had progressed to the third stage, although the serum was still in the experimental stage, but they decided to take a risk. After combining the licorice solution with the serum, they created a vaccine. It had no certainty about the proportions, and according to the normal procedure, it should be tested on animals first, before being administered to patients. But time was running out. They didn't have time to hesitate. Mark took a deep breath and injected the concoction into Anya's body. Unexpectedly, one night passed. Surprisingly, Anya actually regained consciousness. The prolonged high fever finally subsided. Mark was very happy. He quickly had someone notify the virus center. Subsequently, Anya was taken to the third state infectious disease hospital. After 72 hours of observation, Anya's infection symptoms had gradually subsided. The virus center used live samples. After multiple tests on the vaccine, they finally started mass production and implementation of the vaccine. With the vaccine, the epidemic was quickly suppressed. Shortly after, Anya was also discharged in good health. For several months, the relevant departments have been investigating the cause of the virus outbreak. Firstly, Cedar Village had excessive radon radiation, and there was also radioactive uranium in rocks and soil. During uranium decay, it reacts with underground natural gas to produce radon gas. The residents living there were affected by it. Their immune systems were continuously weakened. So, a similar epidemic had occurred before, but the virus had not upgraded at that time. Some villagers, due to taking licorice, suppressed the illness. Of course, these are just objective conditions. Causing the outbreak of this infectious disease was the illegal dumping by the meat processing plant. They imported meat products from Argentina. There was no quarantine inspection conducted. The meat factory sent safe meat for inspection, but they sold uninspected meat of different batches to supermarkets across the region. Although these meat products didn't have viruses, they contained a large number of bacteria. They dumped untreated waste meat into a large pit, causing the accumulation of toxins in wildlife and mosquitoes, and it became increasingly severe. As it moved up the food chain, these animals spread the virus to surrounding areas. This is what caused the outbreak of the epidemic. The underestimation of the initial epidemic several decades ago, indulgent attitude towards meat product inspection, were all factors contributing to this tragic event. At the end of the story, the police arrested the meat factory owner and conducted thorough disinfection of Cedar Village in the forest. The villagers were also relocated to a new home by the government. Finally, the farce came to an end. So much groundwork was laid in the early stages. I thought some dark secrets would be uncovered, but it turned out to be due to the meat processing plant's issue. Perhaps the focus of the film is mainly to portray the female protagonist's struggles to find the truth in a harsh environment. Marina, because of her role in Ekaterina, She gained considerable fame. She excelled in both acting skills and appearance. Her participation added a lot of color to the film.